So I received a message that said the following. I'm currently on the verge of creating a sports podcast from scratch, also for the first time in my life. I'm constantly getting caught up in the minute details and it's delaying my progress to the point of stagnancy. Can you speak more to the steps you took in the process of beginning your podcast so it progressed simply to the level of being able to put out your first show? Any help would be greatly appreciated. So the first step in creating your podcast is committing to creating a podcast. So many people love the idea of it, but when it comes down to the amount of things that need to be done in order to create a podcast, it's like, oh man, that's too much. So commitment. Are you interested or are you committed? Interested is just like, oh, I like the idea. Committed is, I am going to commit to doing this. Once you're committed, the rest is going to be a lot easier. So what you want to do is break this bad boy down into simple steps. And, oh, by the way, I created a podcast ebook for this called Podcast Hustle, which I will link below to help you along on your journey. But what I found is the easiest thing when just starting out podcasting, or pretty much anything you're going to create, is make it simple and digestible and easy for you. So the way that I did this is write down, I'm going to work for 30 minutes on my podcast every single day, or an hour. Whatever the amount of time is, do it. So if it's only 30 minutes, so like when I wrote an ebook, I did it in 30-minute chunks, and you can do the exact same thing with your podcast. And you just go step by step. You say, all right, what do I need to do? And if you look in the ebook that I've got, I give you step by step of what needs to be done. So in the very beginning, you look and you're like, all right, well, what's the name of my show? And then you just sit there for 30 minutes, and until you get the name, great. Now write the show description. Once you've got that, move on to the next thing. It's very much the, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Podcasting is the exact same thing. And oh, by the way, in podcasting, the way that you get to just executing all the time, the large majority of it just happens up front. That's the most intimidating thing about podcasting, is that there's so many steps. Let's call it 30. They're not hard. There's just 30 steps that you need to do before you launch your podcast. So just do it in little chunks, 30 minutes, one thing here, one thing here. It's like, can you create the cover art for your podcast? Sure. Do you know how to do graphic design? No. All right, well, go on Fiverr, go on LinkedIn and say, hey, anybody know a graphic designer? Just break down the steps into micro steps. That way it's not this huge, gigantic task that you got to do. You just got to figure out one thing, and then you say, all right, well, what do I want to do when I'm writing my show? And you do the exact same thing. You say, all right, well, I got to start with an intro. I got to say who I am. What's the body of the show going to be like? What's my call for action? And then what's my outro? So everything that you do with content creation and building a podcast, break it down into the micro. And it really helps if you know what you need to do in terms of a full outline. So what I recommend is have everything written down that you need to do. So this may be something that takes you an hour, where you go through in the ebook and you say, all right, I need to do this, and this. And you've got this huge list of all the different tasks. Then just start crossing them off. 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here. Another way that you can do this is you say, when do I want to launch my podcast? So I'm committed, and then you create a date for yourself. So if you say, I'm going to do it in 1 month or 2 months, that'll determine how much time you spend on it in order to make it happen. Because once you've got a deadline, then it starts getting closer and closer and closer. And what I recommend is you tell people about when you're going to launch it. That way you've got social proof, and everybody else should hold you accountable. That way, if you're someone who lives in action and does what you say you're going to do, then this won't be a problem. And for some of you, it may be like, man, what in the world? What if I don't do it? Well, guess what? Are you somebody who does things when you say it, or are you someone who doesn't? And it's a great way of just throwing it out there, being like, I'm creating a podcast a month from now, letting all you guys know. And then every single day, feel free to update your progress on social media so you can let your audience know, which will help you in getting more listeners. Hopefully this helped you understand a little bit more about simple things you can do to get more process oriented towards the launch of your podcast. If you've got questions more on what do you do once you want to launch the podcast, I think that's a separate video, but hopefully there's some good action steps here that can help you along on your journey. Have yourself a fantastic rest of the day. Let's see if we can do this real quick this way. Oh, boom shakalaka.